Media and women is an interesting topic because very often when it comes to the production, becomes to the direction, becomes to even the creation of many films, they are not women. Doesn't mean that women aren't doing it, but when it comes to high budget and whatever your venue, whether it's Hollywood or what have you, they are not going to women. It's only recently that we have had women even win, not just director and producer, but actually to see some women being recognized, Academy Award, this last one, for sound, and for the other production values that are behind it. It's not from lack. There was a study, just came out, 3-year study, and looking at it. And there was an interesting thing when the people out of USC Annenberg School of Communication were doing this interview all around, and there was many in Hollywood and what have you say, well, women are just not interested. You know, hello. It's maybe not within their small group, and the issue has always been, how do you break through it? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, and then also, why do we make such a big deal about women being part of the media? Remember the Beijing Platform for Action, one of the 12 areas was media, because if just like power in our public affairs and our local government, if women are not there at the table from your production to the direction to the storytelling, then our issues, our voice, our face is never portrayed in the many ways it should be. And if we don't portray it, then we are literally, what's the term for it? We're perpetuating this very limited view of who and what women are and what they can do. And there is never more a powerful medium than the media, and I don't just mean film, I mean radio, I mean TV, I mean in advertising and down the line. So that's gives you an idea of where we're coming from. So let us start off with Elisa, and they're going to introduce themselves and talk about what they're doing, each one of them, and then we're going to go into the rest of our conversation. Go for it.
All right, thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everybody. It's always fun to go right after lunch, isn't it? Your bellies are full and full of wonder. So much great stuff happening here tonight. So I'm Elisa Parker. I am the creator and co-founder and host of See Jane Do, and it's an award-winning social change multimedia program. And it's really about capturing the stories of everyday women doing extraordinary things and empowering women to be heroes of their own lives. I love to say, don't be a dick, be a Jane, because it's really about like, how long can we keep? I love leaning in. I lean into a lot of things. You know, I'm having my 17th wedding anniversary with my husband, so we'll be leaning into each other. But you know, as far as leaning into broken systems, when I say that, it's not about I love guys. I love our man fans, and they're just as supportive and important about all this that we're talking about. When I say don't be a dick, be a Jane, it's really saying, like, let's stop leaning into broken systems that no longer serve us, and let's start to create new possibilities and the new dreams. And I think, we heard Liz referring to that as well, and Esta and all of our amazing panelists today. Really, right? Isn't it about creating the new dream? New possibilities, right? And part of media is if you can see it, you can be it, and you can believe it. And I know we've heard that a lot. So we're going to, I'm sure, talk a little bit more about that and some action that we can all take right now. And it's just an honor to be here. I just want to also mention, Esta said before that movements are about moments. Movements are about moments. And to me, that is what media is. It's about creating these moments. And if we are looking at these moments as possibilities, that is exactly what media is. It's a moment, and it shows us what's possible because we start believing it, right? It's simply a reflection of what it is what's going on in our world. And if 90%, 95% of the storytellers are men, then what does that say for what's possible for us, right? Looking in the mirror, what's possible? So that's my platform, that's my passion, is how do we recreate that? And how do we seize on these moments every single day? Because that is truly what it's about, whether that's through Twitter or Instagram or just even here today. How are we going to seize this moment today? we're sharing it right now because you got your iPhones up, or you might be tweeting it. So it's just something to think about. All we have right now is this moment. So what do you want to do about that? Because that, to me, media is about, it's just a platform for expression, and that's sharing or talking or taking a photo. So it's just something to think about. How are we going to seize the moment today? And it's an honor to be here with all of you.
Hello, my name is Maral, and I work in the film industry right now. I went to film school, and I work as an editor, recently as a director, and also as a production coordinator on narratives and documentaries. So I think I can speak firsthand to the experience of being a woman behind the scenes. And it's not good, obviously, since we're talking about it. There was a study recently done by the Center for the Study of Women in TV and Film. And it's not only not good behind the scenes, but also the way women are portrayed, not surprisingly, on screen. Only 12% of the protagonists were women in the top 100 grossing films. I think this is from 2 years ago, maybe. 30% of all speaking parts are women, only 30%. And of those, many are the love interest of the male character. And then 13% of women are represented in a position of power. And I think that last one is a little bit more tricky because I feel like the media represents reality to a certain extent, and then it also shapes it. So I flew here from New York, and in the first class and business section, I feel like there were 2 women out of maybe around like 20 seats. So I feel like to a certain extent that is representing reality. Men do have more power, but at the same time, I feel like it's related to what somebody said about women having to be asked 7 times before deciding they can run for office. It shapes your vision of what's possible when you only see men winning the Academy Award for director until like recently. It affects what you think you yourself can be. So I feel like you were saying that, they're saying people don't even want to, like women don't want to direct. And I think they do want to direct, but not enough of them do because they're not used to seeing their gender in that role. I think.
There is one of the things when we were looking at films for the Film Fest, documentaries, it is an incredible amount of women throughout the world who have created independent films. And that's where women are doing it. It's not from lack of, what is it, they wait for you to be in the pipeline, whatever. The pipeline is there, it's just jammed down because they're not letting them through. But what is that, I think what we want to talk, what is the barrier? What is the challenge? And I'm going to say right off, the one thing that I've heard from everyone is funding. Absolute funding. If you're not doing the super budget film with the studio, what have you, how do you get your voice? How do you get your film? Whether it be creative, documentary, narrative. I spent, as a documentarian for my job, I would do 8 documentaries within 2 months with a budget of $9,000, which is absolutely incredibly little, and did it in 6 weeks with interviews on sites, with whatever. And the only way I could do that and be able to afford it was I not only wrote the scripts, but I also, directed them, did the interviewing, and what have you, and I had a professional crew. And that is the kind of barrier that many look at. There is a new crowdfunding. There are people you're going to be seeing that are there on crowdfunding asking for your support. Just a few dollars go a long way. So funding is one challenge. What's another challenge?
Well, yeah, funding's huge. It's definitely huge. And it's interesting, too, because it's, like you said, Kathleen, it's not that women aren't creating media or films. I mean, a lot of us are doing more so documentaries and telling stories that way than feature films, for example. And so I think that's something definitely to look at. But yeah, I mean, as far as funding goes, so I wanted to share just a quick story around this because I think when we talk about creating the new dream, it's also having a shift and how, you can't expect new results by doing things the same way. And so sometimes it's like we think that in order to make this feature film or to be seen or share our message, that we're going to need millions of dollars to produce this. Yes, in the old system, that's how we see it. But so here's what I did in June. I went to an event called BeautyCon, and I took my 12-year-old daughter, and BeautyCon was all about like redefining beauty for girls inside and out. 8,000 tweens and teens. 8,000. And I went because I've been thinking about doing a mother and daughter event. 8,000 were there. It was oversold. And do you know why she really wanted to go? She wanted to connect with her favorite YouTube creators, self-made young women and girls. Like there were 45 of them, and she knew most of them, and she wanted to meet them. And I'm like, these women are self-made. They started doing YouTube videos out of their homes with their iPods, right, about what they were passionate about what they loved most. And Bethany Moda, who probably some of you know if you have girls or young women, she just started by sharing her stories, right, about being bullied, about, it's really authentic heart stuff. So yes, talking about the barriers and funding is huge, but I think then we also got to start looking and seeing, well, what's working? Like if these women are creating brands from doing these YouTube videos, I mean, it's multi-million dollars that they're creating. So I guess, Kathleen, it's like, well, what else can we do, right? And instead of thinking, this is what I need to make this happen, how can we even learn from these new makers and creators? How can we learn that? I was astonished. I was like, this is a whole other thing that I'm not, because I do radio and public radio and video, and I was like, whoa, Elisa, you got to step back and start assessing what are some other ways to start making a mark and sharing voices and stories.
Sort of related to what both of you were talking about, I feel like part of the reason why it's hard for women to get funding is just that men are taken more seriously. I went to film school, I went to NYU, and even at NYU, which is a pretty liberal, educated crowd, in film school, I feel that not just boys, but also girls are not used to picking other girls as their like director of photography, or they don't necessarily aren't too interested in collaborating with other girls just because they're more used to seeing successful men in the film industry. I don't know, their vision of that is affected, and so they don't want to collaborate with women as much. And it's not, again, just men doing this, women also do it. And I feel like when it comes to funding, I feel like I heard a conversation where a girl was talking about not wearing a skirt because she was going to a production meeting. It's just like you have to highlight the most masculine part of yourself if you want to be taken seriously or if you want to get money. And I think a lot of women in the industry also play along with that just to make things easier for themselves. And I guess a question to ask is, if it wouldn't be better to not do that, and so that you can actually transform people's idea of who successful people in the industry can be. Like if you're wearing a skirt, that shouldn't affect. Yeah.
There is a special documentary that just came out, and it's called Girl Power. And we think that's good, because that's a phrase we're using when we're talking about leadership and young women or what have you. But it is interesting what the documentary is about, how the media and advertising have co-opted that term of girl power. And now they're defining what girl power is. And instead of it being leadership and being there and a voice, whatever, it's all about you've got power if what you wear, what your makeup looks like, what you play with, what you buy, that makes you more powerful in the games. So it is a constant kind of struggle to keep our message and keep our definition out there. So content is a big issue about media. Besides funding, so what other challenge do you see in what you're doing as a production person? What other places what are you running up against in terms of barriers, or what's a solution? Solve the whole problem.
Okay. I feel like it's gonna take time. It's going to, I mean, yeah, we're still talking about this,
Okay.
and it's 2015. So it's going to take a lot of time. People's mentality isn't just going to change, but I feel like it really does come down to viewing women in a position of power, changing your view of femininity and masculinity and what that means. I think those all play into not just the film industry, but all other industries as well. I feel that getting concrete laws passed, I think Europe has already started to do this, where they're requiring, a lot of countries pass this, equal funding for women and men directors. So that would really help. And I'm gonna keep thinking about other.
Okay, no. One last, and I know they're already giving us a sign.
They're
But
already getting the thing. So I guess I would position that into some action items, because I know that's one of the things Marilyn was excited about. One of the events that I've created is Passion into Action, and now I'm even going further than that and just looking at how do we even wake up to the wonder that exists in all of us first. And that goes back to what your mom was talking about, that in order to, one needs to know themselves really in order to change the world. And I truly believe that. So I think that's first and foremost. There's a couple of things that we could even do. The Emmys are coming up. The Representation Project has the great campaign. I know also Women in Action Media was a big part of it, called Ask Her More. Have you heard about that? How many have heard about Ask Her More? Okay, so a fantastic idea, right? We were talking about the impact of Twitter and social media. You could do it on Instagram, right? Ask Her More is like when the reporters are on the red carpet. And yeah, what are you wearing? And show us the jewelry cam, right? It's a little camera right there. And so there was a difference last year during the Oscars, because what they're doing now at the Representation Project is aligning some of the actresses and their tweet handles, and then on the right side will be reporters, and so you can tweet to both and say, hey, ask her about such and such, right? And it actually was a big shift last year. It was so successful, so they're doing that again this year. And I'd also encourage you to see Behind the Mask, You Live in, about for boys in media. Have you guys seen that? Oh my God, it's probably one of the most powerful movies I've ever seen. Jennifer Siebel Newsom's film. Such an important film about boys and just how we raise healthy boys in our society, and media is such a big part of that. And then just the last thing, in knowing about movements, right, and that movements are moments, and how do we seize that moment, I think a big part too, Kathleen, is in waking up to the wonder that's within us. If you're going to believe it, to see it, we don't always see that in ourselves. We don't always see, sometimes women will come up to me and say, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be creating or doing in this world. I don't have the answers for them. I can ask the right questions, but we are born with those already inside. So sometimes, though, have you ever had a mentor, someone you deeply admire, and she says, Kathleen, you are such an amazing connector, right? And the work that you've done, to have someone see that. So my action item for you would be to even a woman here today. Maybe you haven't even met her, but I bet if you say it, it'll deeply align with her. And say, the wonder in what I see in you. This is the magic I see in you. Because we have to start with each other and just in this moment right here. And so those three things, seeing the wonder in each other, right? Check out Ask Her More. And what's my third one? Tweet this right now. Or go on Instagram. Yeah.
I'm going to end it with, to add to what you're saying, there is a saying, and it's for all of you, is that you've got to trust in yourself. Trust that you can do it. And also, don't be afraid to take a risk. And that is the biggest barrier to all of us. So there's a saying that says, when you go to the darkness of all that you know and all that you understand, you have to trust that when you step into that darkness, there's either going to be a bridge you didn't see, or when you step out there, you're going to learn to fly.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Question. You both have alluded to the fact of film and media being oftentimes a male-dominated industry. So I wanted to ask you, for young women, there's a lot of young women in the crowd here, if you're interested in getting into that industry, I probably can be very challenging. Could you talk about like one, your personal experience of how you broke into that industry, and then any advice you would share?
I went to film school. It's a very expensive way to do it. But it helps. And I think what helps the most is the connections that you make and the networking. That's really a big deal, I think, in many industries, but especially in the entertainment industry. But there's a website now called No Film School. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to question, especially with the new digital age where equipment isn't as expensive to get, if you actually have to go to film school. There are also a lot of directors who've dropped out of film school, a lot of famous ones. I think there are many different ways of doing it. So it depends on the specific person. I do think that you do need technical training for it. So I would maybe consider going to school for it in that respect, but you can also get that by interning in films, which is a whole nother conversation. It's like there's a big problem of internships in the industry because now people are hired as interns and they're not paid, and like people do this for years, then it's really hard for them to actually start getting paid. 2 people actually recently sued a big film for that, yeah. So I think that's what I have to say.
I would just add real quick to that. I mean, we're at a time of being creators of our own experience and literally making things up. So when I talked about the YouTube creators, there's an example, like we probably would have never thought about that 20 years ago, right? That these self-made young women are creating their brands and message through their own bedrooms, right? And so first of all, just thinking what it is that you really want to get out and share with the world. And similar to what you said, I'm on the other end of the spectrum, right? I'm 44 years old. I was involved with media when I was much younger and took another route. I ended up doing organizational development and training. But I always knew I would do this, right? It was my inner knowing. And so I actually went and got some training to learn more of the technical end. But then the key for me was really aligning myself, like you said, with others who are doing it. So find someone that's doing what you love, right? And go interview them. Women, we love to share our stories, and guys love to share our stories and would be happy. So if there's someone that you really admire, then go out and connect with them first. That's how I've gotten most of my jobs, is actually by doing informational interviews with them. And there's so many great resources. Of the hundreds of women that I've interviewed, no one has ever said no. Everyone, it's amazing. I mean, Gloria Steinem just says, just tell me what you want and I'll help you. Like, that's what I love about women, is we want to help each other. And that's how we can use that inherent nature of being compassionate to really, propel the movement for each other.
Go to another resource, the Gina Davis Media Institute. That is a really, really based out of Los Angeles, and but she and that whole group and their connection to actresses, filmmakers, what have you, they're all about bringing women to the forefront. And what a great place to connect and probably give you some good insights.
Resource. Another great resource that I did actually my training with was with the Women's Media Center. So they have it's very competitive now, but it's the Progressive Women's Voices training. See yourself as an expert in something, right? So young women, see yourself as what I'm an expert in, and that's what they work with you on. And then how are you going to share that with the world? So invaluable. Can't recommend it enough. So another great resource.
Okay. Thank you.